When you hear puzzle game, you probably immediately think of something like Portal, or maybe Portal 2. It's certainly true that Valve's puzzling portal placement platformer pleased players, performing nearly peerlessly to become the puzzle paragon, the epitome of perplexing, the quintessential profundity to ponder. However, there are more than a few puzzle games, and sometimes we don't even realize they're puzzlers. From Tetris to Myst to Candy Crush or Satisfactory, Scribblenauts, puzzle is a huge genre. A lot of mobile games are puzzle games, and there's a draw to them. You might call it the sense of discovery, or perhaps the reveal, a eureka moment. I'm not alone in calling it the aha moment. That time when you go, aha! I figured it out! I am a genius! This video will have a few spoilers for Superliminal, a new game released by Pillow Castle. I will try not to spoil it too much, but there's a specific puzzle that will get looked at pretty closely, though I'll give you a warning, and some others that might get incidentally spoiled just through the footage. If you haven't heard of Superliminal, that's okay too. It's a puzzle game on Epic from a small group of developers, and I'll just show you the first puzzle here and let you have that aha moment. It's a game about perspective, and that particular mechanic is super cool. It's really neat. And I remember when I saw this moment, I went, heckin' yes, that's the mother flipper I'm buying next, and then I did. Quick aside, if you choose to pick it up on Epic, please consider using code CRIMEWAR. It really helps us out. I want to say up front that I liked this game a lot. It took me about an hour and a half, maybe just on the far side of 90 minutes. And that probably doesn't sound like a lot of time, but I'm also a huge fan of puzzle games, and logic puzzles just sort of make sense to me. I ran through Portal and Portal 2 in pretty short times as well, and I don't think that actually detracts from my enjoyment. Portal 2 is infinitely better just because I can play the co-op puzzles with friends, but the fact that I'll play the co-op over and over again with friends, even though I know all the puzzles, should explain just how I view these games. I'm okay with this game being short as long as it's fun. And it is. It's an entirely enjoyable experience. That being said, Superliminal is a bad puzzle game. Before you try to string me up, let me clarify exactly what makes a good puzzle game. Much like the question, what makes a game, it's hard to quantify exactly, but I think it can be summed up as figuring out how to do things. You should never be sitting there wondering what to do, only how to achieve the goal. And that's what makes a good puzzle. In Portal, you press the button. Candy Crush is part of a genre called Match 3s because you match 3 items. In Scribblenauts, you write the thing that the person wants. In Superliminal, your goal is kind of fuzzy. And I believe it was intended to be kind of fuzzy, but this is one case where the desire to craft a story and then slavishly adhere to it has had the unfortunate side effect of harming the core gameplay. The story of Superliminal is not very good. It's not very interesting. The characters in the game are boring and bland, and I'd like to say they're poorly acted, but one of them is a robot, and the other one was clearly told to act like one. The progression is nonsensical, the puzzles quickly become lacking, and there is no real defining vision of the game. It's hard to say what the core premise is, because that core premise doesn't stay the same throughout. Oh wait, but you can grab things and they will stay the same size in your perspective at any distance. Yes, you can make things very large or very small. That is the mechanic the game is sold on. Rarely, however, does it ever innovate on that concept. I will say that in almost 0 cases do you make anything smaller. It's almost always about making things larger, and I feel that's just another missed opportunity. You are searching for something small, hidden away, and then making it large enough to walk through. There's rarely a case of making things smaller for any real reason. That being said, this core conceit is actually pretty fun, but then it loses focus. Okay, we've added a new mechanic where you can view 2D items painted on a wall and grab it, and it becomes an item you can resize. Easy enough, but this is used about 4 times before it just disappears. There's a sliding puzzle that is added in, and it's exclusively a single puzzle. Interestingly, it's one of the few times in the entire game when I had an aha moment, because the solution is actually pretty fantastic, so I won't show it, but we never use this functionality again. There's a puzzle where you grab a light off the wall and use it to light your way. You'll use that ability twice. There's dark hallways and an almost terrifying horror aspect suddenly, and then it's simply gone without any explanation. And I am positive this particular darkness actually has a story meaning to it, but it's never explained. It never pays off, unless you decide to spend your own time pondering it. Most people won't, and the payoff isn't good enough, even if you do spend time thinking about it. Later, the core concept of changing sizes is completely abandoned. Instead, the game focuses on a new cloning puzzle concept, and it's kind of cool too, but we'll abandon it in turn to go right back to the same old make everything bigger again mechanic. And this is when we are suddenly faced with this puzzle. And I'll go ahead and just let it play for a minute. Can you tell how to complete this puzzle? This is the first time any of this is shown to you, and there's no missing mechanics that I didn't show. There's nothing here in this footage that you don't have in-game. There's nothing to click on. There's no surprise small thing to make big. There's no lights you need to grab and shine on things. There's no sliding puzzles. There's no cloning. There's really nothing here that you've been trained how to do. Instead of figuring out how to do something, you're spending time figuring out what you're even supposed to do. It is my opinion that this can be held up as one of the worst examples of a puzzle in the entirety of puzzle gaming. This puzzle has no explanation. It doesn't follow the behaviors that you've been taught the game follows. It makes use of absolutely none of the mechanics you've already learned, and the only reliable way to figure out how it works is to get lucky or have someone just tell you. In fact, if you play this game, this is the spot I would guarantee you start looking for a walkthrough. And yes, the solution is mind-numbingly simple, but again, it doesn't follow any of the rules, and it actually uses a completely new mechanic that isn't used anywhere else in the entire game before or after. If you don't want to know what it is, it's not visual, so don't worry. Go ahead and skip forward. I'll show a nice big graphic once it's over. For those of you who have chosen to stay to learn, whichever door you look at first is always closed. That's it. You just have to look at the opposite door from the way the arrow is pointed. Again, this isn't something that is ever taught to you in the game. It's simply not. Once you complete this section, you'll never see it again, and most people who complete it will have done so accidentally without ever realizing what the actual mechanic is. There is no aha moment with this puzzle. At best, you might get a what the flip moment. That's not good. At no point should you feel that the game is cheating or that it's a cheap trick. There are a lot of cheap tricks in Superliminal, but they always feel like they were momentarily thrown in to service the story. They are there to make the player feel kind of surprised. Oh, hey, wow, look at that. That's kind of crazy. They're not harmful. They're just kind of there, and sometimes they're kind of neat. That's not the case with this puzzle. It's just bad. It actively ruins the pacing and aggravates the player. It's not fun, and learning how the puzzle works doesn't feel like an achievement. You don't feel like you outsmarted the game. You feel cheated. At least with the other puzzles, you were slowly gaining a level of proficiency, and when new new mechanics are introduced, you get to feel momentarily enlightened by understanding and using those new mechanics. However, even those are never followed up on. At no point does this game suddenly feel complete thanks to a previously missing trick. Instead, it feels like the game is trying to be cute, to induce a sense of adoration, but it never really earns the level of adoration it is clearly attempting to achieve. There is no doubt this game mimics Portal pretty heavily and tries to be funny. The problem is that when a joke comes up, you end up saying, "Oh hey, that was a joke." The humor lands completely flat, and while that's partially subjective and partially irrelevant, how funny a game is does not necessarily reflect on how good the puzzles in the game are. It does ultimately fall in line with the overall feeling of a hodgepodge of cool ideas that are incohesive, but which no one felt comfortable cutting. I can't say what part of this game could be reliably removed. If you took out the east-west hallway puzzle, it would probably cut the total playtime of the game down by 5 to 10 minutes alone, and that's just one puzzle in a game that takes 90 to 120 minutes. This is at worst a 2-hour game. If you cut the things that don't fit or don't work, it would probably be an hour-long game. Puzzle games are pretty regularly very short, usually lasting 1 to 3 hours. And this is pretty much right there in the middle. But those 1 to 3 hours are filled with aha moments, and Superliminal just doesn't have those. There are few surprises, and all of them feel like set dressing meant to expose how quirky and strange the setting is, instead of pushing forward the gameplay. I can't help but feel this game could have been improved by a laser focus on being good and innovative on their few core ideas, instead of desperately casting around for a new idea, a new mechanic, and throwing the kitchen sink at the player in the hopes they'll be shocked and surprised by the new mechanic long enough to not think the game is overpriced and under-delivers. Puzzle games are all about how to do things, about achieving the aha moment, where you totally just get it. The matrix is open to you and you see the code underneath. You see how the puzzle works. You've outsmarted the designer, and now it's time for a new devilishly difficult puzzle, a new aha. Superliminal is cool and cute and certainly worth playing for a couple hours if you're into puzzle games. If you liked aha moments, if you like Portal or Antichamber, this is a perfectly good game. But I bet it falls closer instead to games like The Turing Test or Quantum Conundrum. Games which you probably played because they were like Portal, because you were searching for that eureka, but which you ultimately struggle to even remember. Please consider sharing this video if you enjoyed it, because it really helps us out, but feel free not to. If you'd like to watch another video, there's one in the corner right now, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.